Hi folks, Matt Easton here again. So something that's come up in quite a few of the videos I've made about warhammers, battle axes and maces, things like this, is the question of the durability of the wooden shaft of the weapon. And a question that people often ask is, would such a shaft get cut through or damaged a lot in combat? Well, I suppose the simple answer is yes, they do get damaged. But remember that blades of swords also get damaged, edges of axes get damaged, points of pole axes or warhammers get damaged. Basically, weapons, armour, equipment, and of course people get damaged in combat. It happens, okay? However, shafts of weapons like this are generally made of fairly resilient woods, things like ash, sometimes oak. In fact, contrary to popular belief, a lot of people refer to oak because it's known as a very hard wood. In actual fact, oak has a very short grain in it. So oak, in my experience, actually tends to make quite unreliable shafts for tools or weapons. It snaps fairly easily. Although it's hard, it's quite brittle essentially. Whereas something like ash, or of course hickory, hickory is not traditional for European weapons because it's an American wood, but hickory is basically the best wood you can have for a tool or a weapon these days. But the European equivalent of hickory is ash, and ash was used for arrows, pikes, spears, and polearm handles such as warhammers, pole axes, halberds, and so on. It is pretty damn resilient to cuts. It will get notched up, it will get damaged in use. However, it should last you, you know, throughout a fight. It's relatively rare that these things break actually in use, and if it's got chopped up badly, then hey, what, you know, it's cheap to replace, and you just go down to your local wood merchant, buy a new piece of ash, and have them fit a handle onto your weapon again, because the expensive part of the weapon is this bit, the metal. Okay, so yes, they do get damaged in use, but remember, so do all weapons and all equipment get damaged in use, no matter how good you are. If you fight in a skirmish or a battle or even a duel, then it's very likely that your weapons will get damaged. And any of you who've looked much at original swords, doesn't matter whether you're looking at medieval swords or Victorian swords, ones that have been in use, they, first of all, sharpening is essentially damaging the sword from its original state. Every time you sharpen the sword, it removes some material from the edge. I have some antique swords in my collection, and of course there are many in museums where you can see they've been sharpened repeatedly over the course of many years. And you'll notice that actually the edge usually assumes a sort of wavy edge. You may know this with kitchen knives as well. If you sharpen kitchen knives for long enough, eventually they'll get narrower, and of course eventually you can find that the line isn't very straight along the edge, or isn't the same curved profile as it was originally, and you know, you're losing material every time you sharpen it. So even just resharpening the weapon or fixing the weapon is damaging it, but equally in use, of course, it's going to get notches, it's going to get chips, and of course wooden shafts, like anything else, do get damaged. However, I will add to that, as I've said already, these are very tough, very difficult things to do. They're difficult things to damage. I very much doubt that in standard usage anybody would realistically be able to chop through that thickness of ash wood. Very tough stuff. A sword is not going to go straight through it, certainly not in one blow. Even if you laid this in a sort of workbench and took a sharp sword, and this isn't moving around and someone isn't trying to hit you at the time, and you just chopped through it with a sword, it would take quite a lot of blows to finally get through it. Okay, think about using something like a machete, for example, to chop through a thick branch of a tree. It takes many cuts to get through. Okay, and remember, that's green wood, that's fresh wood. Dried wood like this, and of a relatively hard wood, it's much more difficult to get through. Lastly, I will say that one danger to wooden shafts of weapons is actually snapping in use, and this did occasionally happen. So if you'd taken a couple of heavy blows to something, maybe a longer shafted weapon where the forces of leverage and torsion are greater, so something like a poleaxe for example, or a pike, if that's taken a couple of chops into it, then when that hits something, it's possible that through giving the blow it may be enough to actually snap the weapon. And this is, in my opinion, the primary purpose of these things at the side here, which are called langettes. And actually, if you look at poleaxe for example, or certain types of partisan or halberd, they often have langettes which extend very far down the shaft, and partly this is to protect them from being chopped up and damaged so badly in combat, but also it's there to prevent the shaft from snapping and completely snapping in two pieces during combat. Even if the wood did snap, the langettes would still hold it in one piece, hopefully for long enough for you to defend yourself and kill the other guy. But equally they're there to secure this head onto this shaft. Okay, so they're making a very, as well as being having a socket here, they're also got contact points with rivets going, as you can see here, rivets going through the shaft, through the langettes, but all the way down. So you're making a very secure attachment between the head and the shaft. So the head isn't going to fly off, it's not going to be chopped through so easily, and it's not going to snap in use so easily through giving blows and maybe being chopped and then giving blows either. So langettes are useful things, but the downside of langettes is they add weight to the weapon. And as I'm sure you all appreciate, sometimes you want to keep the weight of a weapon down, and actually a warhammer, a weapon like a warhammer, or a sword of course, or a mace, has an optimum sort of weight, an optimum weight that any person can comfortably use. And if it's much heavier than that, you can't move it quick enough to deliver a decent blow, or you can't move it quick enough to defend yourself, and so on and so forth. Okay, so langettes, good, yes, they have various purposes, but you don't want them to add too much weight to the weapon. Okay, I hope that helps. Cheers.